Hey, Slingers, thanks for joining me for another week of the Wordslinger podcast. So glad you could drop by. Today, I'm actually chatting with thriller author Rick Pullen about his book, The Apprentice. Among other things, we're going to kind of deep dive into Rick's career and everything he's doing to make his book a success. Maybe there's some things in there that'll help you with success in your own career. So be sure to sit through this interview, and afterward, I've got some industry news, some cool stuff you're going to want to know about the indie publishing industry. So stick around for that, and I'll see you all on the other side.
It's the Wordslinger podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tomlinson. The Wordslinger.
Wordslinger.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning into another fine week of the Wordslinger podcast. Now today I'm talking with, I love talking to authors in particular, but specifically I love talking to thriller authors. I'm talking to Rick Pullen. He's the author of The Apprentice. He's got other books available. We're going to talk about some of his stuff that's upcoming. And this guy is writing, well, according to your topic, Rick, it's a DC thriller, so that means it's set, I'm going to presume it's set in Washington, D.C. Is that correct? And welcome to the show, by the way.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's set in Washington, D.C., and the title should give away a little bit of what it's all about.
Yes, it is. I want to get into that because it's kind of funny. And I've been thumbing. You sent me a copy of the book, and I've had just enough time to start kind of thumbing through it, and I find it kind of amusing. So, do you want to let's get into the premise of the book, because I don't know how to refer to it. It's not a parody; it's an actual thriller. But you're kind of hinting at some real life people and events, we'll say.
Yeah, think of House of Cards. This is sort of a different version of that. So it's about a journalist. I've spent my career as a journalist. So what I really know is journalism. So this is about a young apprentice, basically, reporter. She just started at this major Washington, D.C. newspaper, and events throw her into investigating the president of the United States, who happens to be, well, he's not actually president yet, he's president-elect. And he happens to be this billionaire developer with no political experience.
Right. That sounds oddly familiar.
Yeah, just a little.
And this, and I love the fact that you gave the president the initials of someone we would recognize. I don't know. I have this fear that if I say the guy's name in conjunction with the interview, I'm going to end up on some sort of watch list.
Well, I mean, there's a few reviews of the book is sort of, I call them my hate mail or something, So yeah. People, you always get that. Anything that even comes close to real life, people get upset about.
Right. Yeah, I get those folks. And so you're. Do you need to deal with
I can't believe the thing goes off, but it does.
That's what happens, man. And this is a warts and all show. I tell people all the time. This is
live, so that's the problem you get sometimes.
Right. So now it's obvious what inspired this particular book. I'm curious though, like what brought you to the world of thriller writing? Anyway, you had a book prior to this. You want to talk about that one just a bit?
That was Naked Ambition. What happened with that is that I had this idea for a scene, and I had it for over a decade, and I couldn't resolve it. And basically what it is, it's like a federal prosecutor leaks a story to a reporter. Again, I write about reporters.
Right.
And the reporter publishes a story. The prosecutor's boss, who's in the Justice Department, gets really angry and decides they're going to go after the reporter to find out who leaked the story to him, not knowing that it was, a federal prosecutor. And so the preliminary hearing or the hearing, whatever it is set up. And at the very last second, because of different circumstances, the prosecutor who leaked the story has to prosecute his own leak. But think about that. What do you do?
That's a sticky
Does
situation.
the reporter, say, okay, you did it? Or does the reporter protect his source? you know, what happens? So I
Right.
couldn't figure out how to resolve that scene. And I talked to friends about it for years and years. And then one day at lunch over a beer with a colleague, it came to me. And that was back in 2011. So I went home that night and started writing. And I had the first draft of the book done by January or February. This was August in 2011 I started. And then it took me 3 years to write because I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I've been a journalist. I mean, you know, inverted pyramid style, all that kind of stuff. And I didn't know
Right.
how to write fiction, so I started reading books on how to write fiction, and I literally read 40 books on how to write fiction. So I know how to write a sex scene because there's a book on that.
Yeah.
Dialogue, I'm pretty good at that. Setting, that's probably my weakness, but there's books on setting. Scenes, you know, you name it. I mean, there's just so many books out there on how to do this, and I figured it out. And you know, and I also had help of a great editor. Lauren Oberweger, who's she's in Tampa, Florida, and she's my editor, and she was a huge help, and it just sort of taught me how to do this and pull it all together. And when I finished the book, it was a good book, and it got published, and it became a bestseller in 3 weeks. So I was pretty
Wow.
happy about it. Yeah.
Wow. 3 weeks. What's your secret?
I don't know. I mean, I have a publisher friend. I mean, not when I say bestseller, an Amazon bestseller, but it was number
Yeah.
one in three different thriller genres. And it just, I have a buddy who's a niche publisher, and he said, Rick, you don't know what you've done. You're the one in a million who really made it.
Right.
And I thought, you know, whoa, okay. I mean, it's like, it's selling like crazy. And, you know, now, am I a New York Times bestseller? No, I mean, I'm
Right.
nowhere near that. But
Right.
you know, Amazon-wise, it sold really well, and it caught people's attention. It helped me get an agent.
Mhm.
So you know, everything worked out nicely.
Hey, there's hope, man.
Yeah,
Washington Post just announced that they're revamping their bestseller list, and they're going to start including Amazon results.
good.
So, you know,
Yeah,
you never know.
too late for me, right? But
Nah, man, you got the
yeah,
next book. Yeah, you got the next one coming out. Yeah, I know. I felt the same way. I'm like, oh, where were you when I was hitting bestseller on Amazon and iBooks? And
yeah.
now I'm, you know, who knows? Who knows? We'll see. We're gonna both hit that New York Times list, man.
So
For what?
so my first book, Naked Ambition, is about an experienced investigative reporter.
Okay.
The Apprentice is about a novice investigative reporter, or just reporter. And you know, so it's, well, you know, and then and my next book is going to be a sequel to Naked Ambition. That's called Naked Truth, and
Okay.
that'll be about the murder of a Supreme Court justice.
Right.
And then I'm working on another series, so it would be a third series, which I'm talking to another publisher about, called Silent Partner. And that again would be another investigative reporter, but and so it's like they're all different personalities, different people, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And but I'm thinking, well, how do I deal with this? If you know, especially if the third series, you know, gets picked up by another publisher. And so basically, they all work for the same newspaper. So all the
Oh.
secondary characters will be the same, and that's just like, oh, that makes it much easier. So
Oh, that's a clever idea.
yeah. It just makes it. I mean, because I know then all the secondary characters, and it just makes that part easy. So then it's just working on the original character.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I was going to ask you if you were, because it's clear that was going to be a sequel. I didn't know if you were planning to expand it into an entire series, but you know, that,
well,
of course, the question though is how naked can you get? I mean, how many naked titles can you,
I have a long list. So the
really?
next,
Okay.
yeah, well, so Naked Truth will be out. That's about the Supreme Court. And then Naked Eye will be coming out in another year or so. That'll be about the press. I
Okay.
mean, because so much is happening with the press and all the changes with the press, I thought,
Right.
well, let's do a novel about that.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. And you know, that's, of course, you know, reporters are just like cops. There's a rich world you can dig into. And a lot of it sort of, when you coming from that world, you've got that inside information, right? How much
Right.
is that influencing your book?
Oh,
Clearly a lot.
Yeah, well, you know, you hit on something there, because I don't know anything about cops. You know, I don't
Right.
know how they do stuff, how they investigate stuff. I mean, I'm a huge Michael Conlon fan. I mean,
Right.
huge. I've stopped reading his books because there's only 4 left that I haven't read yet, and I enjoy them so much. I don't want to read them all and then like, oh, I'm all out, you know.
Slow down, savor your books.
That's right. And so, but you know, I really said, well, I don't know anything. I don't know how these guys investigate this, and basically, I'd have to start from scratch, you know, if I were to write a cop book, you know, and I have friends who do that. So I thought, well, what do I know? I know journalism. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah.
So use what I know, and you know, and expand on it, and you know, and so that's what I do. I mean, I know I used to be an investigative reporter, so I know how that works.
Yeah, yeah, and that's it's not unique. I mean, there are other authors out there who were reporters who come from that world, but I mean, it is kind of a leg up in that you can draw on past experience and past you know, encounters and that sort of thing as part of your work. I mean, I'm sure that what's that?
I do.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So all those, I love that idea that your supporting characters repeat throughout the books. So that does seem like a way to, it's almost like, I don't know if you're much of a comic book reader, but it's almost like that kind of universe where you got all these super heroic characters, and then they may encounter, you know, some minor B character from some other book. So that's kind of cool.
So you know who they are.
Yeah, exactly.
So my readers, you know, they'll know those secondary characters.
Yeah, and I think that would make the world that much richer.
Well, it helps me because it lets my secondary characters grow some, you know, because so they're not just so flat. You know, it gives them an opportunity to be 3-dimensional as well.
Now, what happens when those characters take on a life of their own and they want their own book?
Well, you know, it could happen. I mean, I've thought about that with a couple of them. I wonder, you know, but we'll see.
Well, how great is that, though? Like how great is that? Because now you've got these developed characters with history that the readers already love. So if someone resonates with a particular character, it's almost like genius marketing, Rick. It's you can discover ahead of time which characters you should write about.
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea, and it just it you know, basically for me, it's finding the time to write all this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you still working as a reporter?
And I'm a magazine editor, so I mean, I haven't written any nonfiction in years. I haven't. So in fact, I'm retiring this year, so I'm hoping to maybe in the fall actually write a few stories or something as I transition out and they hire somebody to replace me.
Right.
So it'll be a several month transition.
Yeah.
So, and next year I actually get to write full time, and that's when I'll start getting, you know, these novels all done. And,
that's usually right around the time things get scary. Because suddenly you're like, okay, this is it. I don't have the fallback anymore.
Yep.
Yeah. So
but I'm ready. I'm ready for it. I've wanted to do this for years, so we just decided to take the plunge.
Now, have you found that there's any difference between? I mean, there are differences, but I mean, any key notable differences between writing, you know, in the journalism world and writing for writing fiction? Anything that really just stands out and makes it awkward?
I mean, it's how you well, first of all, the dialogue is a whole lot better.
Right.
You know, you can go back and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite, and I'm a huge fan, you know, of Lawrence Block and Dashiell Hammett, who I think write the wittiest dialogue, you know.
Right.
And so I go back and I really work hard on that. You know, so people think, oh, that's brilliant. You know, well, yeah, it's been rewritten 10 times, but people, you know, readers don't realize that. So yeah, the dialogue's better. Just the crafting of the story is totally different. You know, the way you sort of do a chronological, you know, in fiction, whereas you don't do that in journalism. Journalism's the old-fashioned pyramid style for the most part.
Right.
Unless you you do write some narratives for magazines, but you're basically telling the most important thing first, and you get, you know, a little less important until you get to the very end.
Yeah.
And so it's a totally different style. And like I said, I read 40 books on how to write fiction because I didn't know how to do it.
Right.
And so I had to learn, and, you know, I mean, because that's the one thing, it took me 3 years to write my first book and took me 3 months to write The Apprentice. It took me 9 months to write Naked Ambition, or excuse me, Naked Truth, and I'm still doing the final edits on that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it depends on, I mean, like The Apprentice is meant as a serial, and whereas the others are meant as a series. So the Naked is Naked series, I call it. And then, you know, The Apprentice, you know, when I write the second book, it'll just be The Apprentice Part 2 or something like that.
Oh, okay.
The story in The Apprentice will pick up right at the end, you know, where the first book leaves off, the second book will pick right up right there. Whereas in a series, you're just talking about the same characters.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, what about the sort of work ethic of the whole thing? Do you come back to it each day, or do you have like a daily word count, or how do you handle it?
I don't do a word count. I do time pretty much. I mean, since I'm still working right now, I get up at 5 and I basically write till 7. And then I got to go jump in the shower and, you know, head off to work. So, and I'm a lot fresher in the morning. My brain works better in the morning. So that's when I write.
Yeah.
I mean, every once in a while I'll do a little bit at night, but the reality is my brain's not there.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
And I get into it, man. And I mean, sometimes I'm writing so fast, I can't, you know, it's garbage, you know, the first time you write, but it's, you have to get all the ideas on paper.
See, that's the key, right? Because I tell authors that all the time. I talk to a lot of what I call will-be authors. And
no discipline.
No one likes to hear that. No one likes to hear that you have to turn off the internet editor and just put crap on the page.
Yep.
And then come back and edit later.
Well, so what I do, which is kind of interesting, I think, I haven't heard of other people doing it, but, you know, I'm writing along, and when you're writing, that's when you're concentrating, you know, that's when you're totally focused on what you're talking about. And so I'll be writing, you know, I don't know if I'm in the middle of dialogue or something, and an idea comes to my head, and I just write it out right there. So I could be right in the middle of a plot doing something, and suddenly it says, you know, make sure, you know, this character does this and that character does that, and switch it from the character, whatever. And then I keep on writing, because if I don't, I'll forget it. I just know I'll forget it. And, you know, so, and as you know, the first draft is just garbage. It's trying to get, you know, one foot in front of the other and get the whole plot out there. Unless you're Lee Child. I think Lee Child writes it all in one sitting almost, and I admire the hell out of him.
He just spits it all out between sips of scotch.
Yeah. and pokes of marijuana.
Yeah, so you know, it's interesting. We come from similar backgrounds, you and I. I was not really a journalist so much. I did write for newspapers and magazines for quite some time, but most of my career was copywriting, and it's the same general idea. And now I do appreciate, though, because I think, and you probably are the same way, because even the bad stuff is actually pretty okay. So it's not going to be that painful to come back to, hopefully.
What I enjoy most, I mean, what I hate the most is plotting, because you know, I love twists and turns, and my daughter is a big help. So she helps me with crazy ideas for plots, and getting it all, you know, in order and all that. That to me is really hard. Yeah. But then so that's like my first draft is really a glorified plot. And then the second draft is where I really start to edit and rewrite. That's when I really call it writing.
Right.
That is so much fun. I love crafting sentences. I love going back and fixing sentences. I love, you know, and then the third draft is when I really, really try to polish it.
Yeah.
And really make it sing.
Yeah.
So that's the part I love.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's
hard. Yeah.
That's when you've pulled all the strings and, you know, the picture starts to show up. So you now you're coming at this and you're spending your time on it. You said something earlier. You said you don't like plotting. Do you outline, or because I'm a discovery writer?
I don't outline. I should. I mean, I get an idea and I'll jot it down. You know, like I said, I'll be in the middle of writing. What I try to do is the old Mickey Spillane school, you know, write a great first chapter and a great, you know, to get people to read the book, a great last chapter to get them to read the next book.
Right.
And so I know how it's going to end. It's getting the whole middle part of the book to get there. And that's what I use my daughter for. My daughter Jill helps me, all these plot twists, because I love plot twists. I love surprising my reader. So my books are just full of plot twists, and you think it's going in one direction and it goes in another. And I will say, a lot of the reviews in my book have said that their people were actually really surprised. What happened in the book, and I thought it was going here and it went there, and that's the joy I get out of it, is tricking people into they're thinking the book is going one way and it goes another.
Right. Yeah, that's what you want, though, right? You want people to write you and say, I had no idea where it was going and I had to keep reading to find out. So you don't outline.
No.
Yeah. And what's interesting is I've talked to, at this point, thousands of authors. You get a different answer. Well, there's usually one of two general answers. They're either a plotter or a pantser, right? But when you talk to the pantsers, or when you talk to the plotters, they cannot conceive of being able to do what you do. They cannot conceive of, especially writing a thriller with a lot of twists and turns, without having that outline. So how do you keep track of it? I have to
go back, and I add stuff. So like I said, I know where the beginning is. I know where the end is. And when I'm getting there, I'll get a new idea. And how about I put this twist in and that twist in?
Right.
And then I'll so the first draft is done. And then I go, wait a minute, I could do this, or I could do that, or I can change the ending, or I can add something to the ending, or whatever. And so it's a constant building of the plot. So it's, so I do know where I'm going. Right. And that's key, is, knowing where you're going, how you're going to end it. And I just don't know all the twists and turns in the middle. And of course, I work on that a lot, because, most books in the middle kind of die. And I don't want mine to die in the middle.
Yeah, that's kind of the worst thing that could happen to your book, really, is that it's strong beginning and it's strong ending, but if it fizzles out halfway through, no one ever sees the strong ending.
Yep.
Now, you mentioned reviews earlier, and that's of course, the life's blood of authors. Frankly, how do you get those reviews? Do you put anything in the books, or how are you getting them?
They just pop up. I mean, I'm talking about Amazon reviews, and then I have a publicist and marketing people who send the book out to lots of people, and they'll review it.
Right.
But it really is. It's just I don't know. People just go online and review it. It just happens. It just kind of builds. It just. I mean, like I said, I don't know how my book became my first book became a bestseller. I don't know how it happened. It just happened.
Did you have a following at all? You got like a platform?
No, nobody knew who I was. And
wow.
It just took off, which is what my friend, the publisher, was telling me. He says, Rick, you just don't get it. This doesn't happen to people.
Yeah.
So,
you got a whole lot of people right this second who want to stab you, actually.
I mean,
that doesn't happen. Yeah.
I just got really lucky.
Yeah, well, there's probably you don't just get lucky in this business, though. There has to be, a good book behind it all. So
yeah, I agree with that. I mean, and I wrote it and I rewrote it, and when I thought, is this ready to go? And I decided, no, I want one more edit. And so I hired my editor again, Lauren, to edit it one more time, and it just made it such a better book. Yeah. And then after that, I did, a whole nother edit again and again. And it just, you have to do that. I mean, basically what I've been taught is that if it's not the best work you can do, don't publish it. Go back and work on it some more. And that's what I did for my first book.
How many edits do you generally have?
Well, I've only written 3 books, so I don't know. I mean, it's
you haven't got the average yet.
3 or 4.
Right. Yeah, man, there are people who do that. They go crazy with that stuff. Like, and I forget who it was, and it may have been Steve Barry, who says that he does like 50 rounds of revision on a book.
I wouldn't surprise it. I mean, knowing Steve, Steve went through what it took him 88 agents before he got an agent.
Yeah.
And Steve is the one who taught me persistence.
Yeah.
And so and there's a guy named Jack Bales, who's a research librarian, taught me, you have to get up every morning and work it every day. And, you know, of course I'm a member of International Thriller Writers, and they
Right.
preach, you know, about butt in the seat and
Yes.
you know, work it. You know, this is not a romantic sort of a profession. It's really, it's hard work, and it's a business.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of people do not, they either don't think of it like that, or they don't want to think of it like that.
Right.
That whole, just the butt in seat idea and coming back every day is so painful for so many authors.
Yep.
How do you do it? Like what brings you back?
Because I love the plot twist. And it doesn't, I mean, you know, and I'm always trying to think of another plot twist. And like I said, plot is my hardest thing to come up with, but I have good plots. And then I love the rewrite. I love the polishing. I get a lot of satisfaction out of turning a great phrase.
Yeah.
And it's really, that's what it is. And you know, and sometimes at night I'm thinking of the plot. I go, oh, that's what I need to do. And I'll get up, you know, in the middle of the night and go and type up something, you know, so I don't forget it, you know. And the next morning I'm really eager to get there and work on it and make it happen. You know, so I love that part of it. You have, you know, you don't do it to make $1 million. You do it because you love it, because the odds are you never make $1 million.
Yeah. Although one can dream, one can hope.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, so that whole getting up in the middle of the night thing, my wife this morning, she's aspiring to be a writer at this point. I think it's hard to be around me for too long and not want to try your hand at this. She's had an idea for a book for the past, we've been married, let's see, about 12 years now. So she's had an idea for about 8 of those years. And she's always trying to get me to write it. I'm like, this is your story, your book. You should write this book. She got up in the middle of the night last night because she had an idea for an opening and wrote it. Now she's stoked. So
there you go. See,
I'm pushing her.
That's what it takes.
That's what it takes.
Like me, you know, I started out, you know, with that one scene. And as soon as I finally got the scene in my head, how I would resolve it, I sat down and wrote for 4 or 5 months straight. Yeah. You know, but it was getting started. It was getting that, you know, impetus. And when I finally figured it out, I was on a roll.
Yeah. So what I like, okay. So I tell people a lot that, you know, basically it's kind of like carving a statue out of a hunk of marble, right? You actually have to have the marble before you can form it into David. And that's what you're basically talking about is you're going on, you're crafting the marble in its raw form. And then your favorite part is coming back and smoothing all the edges and letting the statue emerge, right?
Yes, that I love. It's just gives me so much pleasure.
Yeah. That's and that's, you know, that's what draws us back to it. So all right.
And it's really about, you know, that you have to want to do it, and you have to be persistent at it. Most people, you know, who say I want to write a book don't, because they quit after 2 weeks. You know, they don't have the discipline to sit down and do it every day and look at that, you know, computer screen and there's nothing on it, and then they just decide, you know, I'll go, you know, get on Google or something, or, you know, or go watch the news or read the newspaper, and they just sort of quit. And because you'll never get published if you don't have the discipline to actually write the book. Right.
Exactly right. Yeah. So you have an agent, you said.
Yes.
How did you end up connecting with your agent?
Well, that's a funny story. Well,
good.
I had 38 agents turn me down, okay?
Yeah.
Or ignore me. Probably most of them, I think, just ignored me. And that, or I don't know how to write a query letter. That's probably part of it too. And what happened is there's this wonderful woman out in Seattle named Mary Buckham. And I told you earlier, setting is sort of my weakness. And she writes these wonderful books about what she calls active setting. Okay. And she's written 3 or 4 of them. I've got them all. I've read them all. I just love Mary. So I emailed her. You know, we sort of became email pals. I said, if you're ever on the East Coast, because I live in Virginia, I said, I want to meet you. So she wrote me back about 6 months later, said, I'm going to be just outside Richmond, Virginia, with the Virginia Romance Writers in November of 2015. So I said, I'm going to come down there. So I contacted the romance writers. They said, sure, come on down, you know, day-long seminar Mary's giving. So I get there, and I have one of 2 guys in a room of about 80 women.
Yep.
And, and Mary's given this seminar and stuff, and they introduced me as, a guy writing a thriller. So, at the end of the program today, Mary's got books and people were in line to buy her books. And so I'm in line, and this woman taps me on the shoulder and says, "Hey, I'd love to read your manuscript." I said, "Sure." And she says, "Well, I'm a reader for an agent in New York." I said, "Sure." So this is a Saturday night. And so I emailed it to her on Monday morning. Monday afternoon, she wrote me back, "I love this. This is one of the best things I've read in years." And she says, "I'm not quite finished yet, but I'm going to get a hold of my agent." And I'm thinking to myself, now, wait a minute. I've had 38 people just say no. And so anyway, the next day she sent it off to him and says he'll be back in touch. And then I didn't hear anything and didn't hear anything. So I thought, well, okay, this is sort of the norm. So in January, he finally emails me, "I really like your book. It's well written. I just don't think it's a breakout novel, so I'm not going to represent you." So then I go, oh man. So my publisher friend who I mentioned earlier said, "Rick, why don't you try this Kindle Scout thing?" And Kindle Scout is a program that Kindle Press puts on. Kindle Press is one of a dozen or more imprints that Amazon has. Right. And basically they put your book up on the internet, maybe the first 4 chapters or 3 chapters. They end it at a certain spot, and people nominate it to be published. And they do it for 30 days, and then they decide if they want to publish you or not. So, naturally you're thinking, oh, this is sort of crowdsourcing, that whoever gets the most votes gets published, but it's not. They actually read your book, and what all the people who nominate your book, if you get published, they get a free ebook. What it's really all about is all those people who get the free ebook, they urge them to then review your book on Amazon. And so it's like free marketing for them. So they picked up my book, and it just took off. So now this is May of 2016. International Thriller Writers is in July. So I saw that the agent who really liked my book but didn't pick me up was going to be there. So I wrote him, and I told him what had happened. And so we ended up having brunch in New York at the conference, and he picked me up as a client.
Wow.
So,
wow.
It helps to sell a lot of books. It gets your agent's attention.
Remember earlier when I said there were a whole lot of people who wanted to stab you right now? It just tripled, because there are so many authors who have struggled to do exactly what you just did, who have had no success at this at all. That's amazing, man.
Try Kindle Scout. I'm serious.
Kindle Scout. Yeah. And it's a program that my listeners are going to be very familiar with. And I actually know a handful of authors very well who got their launch there. So that's an incredible program. So that's fantastic, man. That's that's the Pretty Woman fairy tale story. Yep. Of, magic, basically. You're a freaking unicorn is what you are. Yep. Yep. Well, that's fantastic, man. Well, look, I've kept you on. I told you I'd try to keep this at around 45 minutes. We're around that. So what I'm going to do is, if you'll hang out, don't hang up when I switch this over, but I got to talk to you. I want to talk to you for like 5 more minutes for what I call my Wordslinger after show. So you'll hang out for that?
Sure.
Okay. Tell everybody where they can find more about you online.
My website is rickpullen.com.
Okay.
That's rickpullen.com.
Okay.
They can buy my book on Amazon or order it from any bookstore. So,
all right.
There's the 2 books I have right now are Naked Ambition and The Apprentice.
And of course, for those listening and those watching, I'm going to include links to all this stuff in the show notes of this episode. So make sure you go down there and click through. Rick, thank you so much. Hang out.
Thank you.
Everybody else within the sound of my voice and possibly looking at your screens on YouTube, right this second, you're probably hearing the groovy bridge music. You may dance in place at will. Stick around for some industry news and some other tidbits of information you're going to want to know. And I'll see you on the other side. Thank you so much, Rick, for being on the show. And everyone else, we'll see you next week. Hey, thanks for sticking around through the interview. I hope you enjoyed that one with Rick Pullen. I hope you got something out of it that is maybe helpful to your career. Now we're going to dive right into indie publishing industry news. And I got some great stories for you this week. Some interesting stuff is happening. Some big changes in the industry landscape. First up, the worlds are ending. Kindle Worlds is actually going to be shutting down as of July 2018. This is according to Amazon, who made the announcement primarily by sending notices to the actual IP holders. Now, if you don't know what Kindle World is, Kindle Worlds was a program created by Amazon that would allow content creators, like let's just say me, I could open up the worlds of my books to other authors. So authors could come write a book in my universe, and we would actually split profits on that, split the royalties. As a condition of this, if you wrote in a Kindle World, you were actually signing over the rights to that work to the IP holder. So this has kind of opened up a few questions. There's some gaps now that need to be filled, because as the program closes, basically all those works are reverting to the original IP holder. So the person who created the original world that everyone wrote in. Now there's no word yet if anything's going to come along that will allow these IP holders to republish that work. There's no royalty splitting option on Amazon. And this has created a need in the marketplace, and I think there's going to be some things to fill that need very soon. I'm looking forward to a few of these. Some rumors that I cannot share. Now, isn't that intriguing? But what we've definitely got now is an opportunity for someone to come along and fill this gap. I'd love to hear what you think about this story. Were you a Kindle Worlds author? Did you contribute to someone's universe? Let me know what you think of this turn of events in the comments below, and maybe we can brainstorm some solutions to this. That'd be kind of great too. You can find that story, by the way, on bit.ly/150-worlds. That's going to take you straight to an article that I mined for this information, so you can find that in the description below. Sorry for all the stumbling, folks. It's been a coffee-free day so far. All right, next up, Romantic Times is calling it quits. Now, this is a long-running, Romantic Times magazine has been around forever, and their conference has also been around forever. But they made an announcement on May 16th that at the current conference that they will be closing their doors. They're no longer going to be publishing Romantic Times magazine. The conference is going to shut down. That's the bad news. The good news is there is actually someone starting a whole new conference called the Book Lovers Convention. That's coming from Jo Carroll Jones, and she's going to actually make this an annual thing. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of that. It's a brand new conference. It's aimed at readers. It's aimed at connecting readers to romance authors. So if you were a regular at the Romantic Times conference, this may be an option for you. So be sure to check out the story for this, by the way, in the notes below. bit.ly/150-romantic will take you straight to it. More cocky. I couldn't let it go by. There's too much going on with this story. If you're not familiar with Cockygate, #Cockygate, you might want to check out last week's episode where I kind of broke a story about this, but it's an ongoing thing. It's an evolving thing. The short version of this is romance author Felina Hopkins actually trademarked the word cocky and did also a word mark trademark where she trademarked the word cocky in a particular font. Now, there's been some question about whether she could legally do that, since one, cocky is a common English word. It's being used in a lot of romance titles, several of which were written well before she trademarked the term. So first use is kind of off the table, but also she trademarked a font that she doesn't actually have the rights to. So there's some question there too. This story continues to evolve. There's a lot going on. Amazon's been brought into it. The Romance Writers of America have been brought into it. There's all kinds of legal things going on. There's been a petition to actually have the trademark revoked. It's just a continuously going story. So this week I actually wanted to bring in a link to a story on Vox.com that you might want to check out. It just kind of goes into a little more detail about everything, lets you know what's happening. I will say that all coverage of this has been fairly slanted against Hopkins. And I'm not going to defend what she did. I actually think what she did was wrong. I think that she may have had the right intentions, but I think it's kind of impossible for her to have done this without knowing she was going to piss off a whole lot of people, particularly in the romance author community. So there's a war going on right now. It's interesting, the fine line between protecting your trademark and brand and infringing on the free speech and rights of others. I'm watching it closely. You should too. So check out this story. You can find it at bit.ly/150-cocky. And that's going to fill you up for the week to come. I'm still closely monitoring this story. I'd love to hear what you think about it. So far, opinions have not particularly been divided. Now, Felina is claiming that she's being bullied. I don't want anyone bullying anybody. But I can see where people are going to be hacked off about this. I don't think we need to scorch the earth and salt it behind us, but I do think that this is an opportunity to open up a frank and honest discussion about what intellectual property means in the indie publishing world. So that's it for this week. Now, I did forget to mention, I need to start doing this. I need to be better about this, but this week's Indie Publishing News was brought to you by Draft to Digital, where you can convert and publish your manuscript, distribute it worldwide, and get help the whole way. Drafttodigital.com/wordslinger will help you, help them, and help me. So go check that out. Drafttodigital.com/wordslinger. They're the sponsors of the Wordslinger podcast news segment. So check that out. Make sure you visit wordslingerpodcast.com to find show notes, back episodes, books by me, and a whole lot more. You can find a bunch of cool stuff at wordslingerpodcast.com. That links directly to my personal author site, my professional author site. So explore around a little in there. You can even email me if you want, straight from that site. Now, make sure you subscribe and share. If you subscribe to this show, hit the little bell icon, and that will actually help notify you every time a new Wordslinger podcast episode goes live. Make sure you're sharing this with folks. Go out and tell some folks that you're enjoying the show, you're getting something useful out of it. That helps me, but it also helps my guests who come on promoting their work. So we want to promote them as much as possible. So thank you for that. Thank you for tuning in. I love all of you. God bless. And I'll see you next time.